Hi there, my artisan friends, and in this video we're going to have a look at how to upgrade your Laravel security game. And well, we're going to talk about a few things. I have like 6 tips aligned for you in this video. And well, the first one that we're going to talk about is whenever you update your password, you want to have all your other sessions destroyed. So let's dive in the first one. And the first tip is invalidate sessions on password change. Yes. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you like what we're doing here at this channel, please like and subscribe. That really helps me out. Thank you. Let's continue. So we have this freshly installed Laravel application, and we used Laravel Livewire Starter Kit to do so. And here we have the settings tab, and we could like change the password. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that our other browsers that are also signed into the account are logged out. So if I would change the password right now, so the password currently is password, and I would change it to password 1, and if I save this, I can still click around here, and I can also, in the other browser tab, which is the incognito tab, can also still click around, right? So what we want to do here is when we go over to our application here in our app livewire settings password.php, we have this function called update password, and this takes care of updating our password. So it validates that, and then it updates the user, and then it resets the current password and so on. What we want to do, we want to hook in here in auth log out other devices, and we want to use the password. So log out every other device that is not using this current password. But what we need to also do is we need to add to our web routes in here the middleware auth. Well, we also want to check against the auth session. And this way we can use the session validation to make sure no one enters these routes when their session isn't validated against their password. So let's refresh here and also refresh here. And let's update our password again. So password 1, and let's call it, well, test1234. Test1234. All right, and save that. This will update our password and trigger the log out other devices. And if I now head over to the incognito tab and I click password, I'm not allowed there, so I'm logged out of my session. Cool, so that's how I like to invalidate my sessions whenever I have an update password coming in. So the next tip that I want to share with you guys is signing your URLs for downloads. Like, you don't want a download link to be out there and for everyone to be able to download a certain file. So tip number 2 is signing your URLs. So let's dive in. Okay, so what we have here is a route called download with an ID. For now, I'm dumping or undying download file with ID. So let's do that. So download /1. This will download file with ID 1. Okay, cool. So what I like to do here to make this a little bit more secure, and normally we don't do this in a route, but let's do this in a route real quick. So a get route, which will be generate download link. Cool. I already done this before, right? So I don't want this here, and I want a download. Well, yeah, why not? File name, replace it with the ID. Download link is a Lumen support facility URL, and that has a temporary signed route. And we're going to use the route download, which is this one here, down here. All right. And we're going to add this 30 minutes. So this link will expire within 30 minutes. And we're going to use the ID of the given ID of file ID here. And we're just going to return that. So let's navigate to this route here, like this. And this generates a link for us, download with an expiry and a signature. Let's copy this, like that. Open a new tab and navigate to that, and I can download that. Cool. But we need to add here request has valid signature, and if it doesn't, invalid download link. 403 invalid download link with an abort of 403. So if I refresh here, cool. But if I try to download file number 1 again, I get 403 invalid download link. I think this is pretty nice, like protecting your files to be downloaded by a signed URL, no more access by ID of those files. I think that is pretty secure. So, well, let's move on to the next tip, right? The next tip, imagine you have blog posts and users, and in your URL structure you have users, an ID of the user, posts, and an ID of the post. And when you change that post ID, well, it could be that you have a post that wasn't written by this current user. We can actually prevent you from accessing that post and make sure that the user ID and the post ID are with the same relation in between each other. So the user ID must be the author of that post. We can do that by using scope binding. So let's dive into tip number 3 and fix your route model binding stuff with scope binding. Here we go. So imagine we have this route, a get route that is returning a post with users, the user ID, posts, and the post ID. So basically this, right? So we have secure laravel.test/users/number 3 for user 3 posts with an ID of 8. So if you check in the attributes, indeed this is linked up to user number 3. So basically we have this user public function post has many relation towards a post, and in the post we have a belongs to a user. If we take out the database, for example, we're currently looking at this little post here with ID 8, belongs to user number 3, and with some content. But what if I change it to users 3 posts 10? Let's quickly do that and update the URL here. We now see that we still have a valid response, and it is returning the post ID 10, which belongs to user 4. I almost tripped there, user 4, but we're navigating to users ID 3, posts ID 10. So basically, this isn't adding up, right? So we can actually prevent this by adding onto our route something called scope bindings, and that is actually ensuring that the scope of the binding between posts and user is checked and verified. So basically, if we go to post 8 again, we still get post 8 because it belongs to user number 3. And if I change that to post number 10, which belongs to another user, we get 404 not found because the post that we're looking for does not belong to the user with ID 3. And I think this is pretty nice. We can protect posts to be shown from other users. I think this is pretty cool. So scope binding, very cool. But without further ado, let's dive into the next tip, and that's all about avatars and images and stuff like that. So imagine you have this like imagery that users can upload an avatar, and we're using the original file name. We could run into trouble really quickly and really fast. Imagine you have a user using the same file name and file extension of another user and uploads that file to the same folder. You would end up being overriding that file, and one user, his image gets replaced with another user's image. We don't want that. And also, by updating this, we'll also make our file structure secure and make the names not explain what the images are about. So without further ado, tip number 4, not using original file names. Here we go. So imagine you have this file upload here in settings for an avatar. When I choose one, I select this one, for example, a nice cute little dog. This is stored into my file system under the name of profile image.png, right? No, sorry, JPEG. It's a JPEG. And this is because we use the file name equal to this avatar, which is the uploaded file, get client original name. Well, what will happen here if whenever I, for example, log out and I log in with another user, like Freddy, for example, at vulpo.be, and the very secure password of password, there we go. And if Freddy also wants an avatar and also wants to upload one, as you can see, the name is identical, profile image.jpg. If I open that one and I upload, there we go. He has this cat. All right. So whenever I log out again, and for example, Bert will log on again with the secure password of password, of course. Well, if he goes to his settings, his dog has disappeared because we have overwritten that cat image, that dog image with a cat image, because they have the same name. So what I like to do here, I like to use like this string and maybe a UUID, right? So like this, and I want to import that, import str from support str, there we go. And I want to chain that onto, for example, instead of the client original name, get client original extension, and normally it should autocomplete here. Yes, it does. Cool. So whenever I do this, I have a UUID stored into my file system with, yeah, the extension that it should be. And this should be a capital S, right? There we go. All right, so let's try that out, right? So if I now choose to upload a dog again, there we go, upload. Yes, it's a dog. And now I go into the other account, log in. There we go, with Freddy at vulpo.be, password. Okay. And I go into settings again. I still have that cat. And I can actually remove that cat, upload a new one, for example, a cat again, upload. I have the cat. I log out again. Quit here. All right. Log in with Bert. There we go. And if I head over to his settings, his dog is still remaining. So we fixed the overriding of our image, and well, we made the names in our directories, yeah, not that human readable. We just have UUIDs dot the extension. I think that is pretty neat. We can, yeah, just use images with the same name. We upload them without any concern of running into trouble. Well, let's move on to the next tip. In the next tip, we're going to, yeah, well, some people like to expose user IDs. Well, I don't. And let me show you how you can do that with encrypting the IDs in the URL. So without further ado, let's dive into tip number 5, encryption of the user ID. So imagine you have this route users/ID, which is actually a find or fail of a user, which is taken in an ID, and we eventually dump or die that user. But we don't want to expose the user ID, right? So if I use user ID 10, I get the object back of that user. Well, what we can do here is actually encrypt that. So for this example, I'm going to use a route called generate user link, like that. So, and I'm not going to use a temporary signed route here, but what I am going to use is I'm going to use a user ID, which is equal to, for example, 1 here. And I'm going to generate this user link, which is actually a crypt, like that. And I don't want this to happen here. I only want, and I want to import that right there. All right. And I want to encrypt string of the user ID. Cool. So now the link, actually, the user link, is the route of user ID user link. All right, so let's generate that and let's navigate to that route. There we go, generate user link, and this gives me, every time I refresh, another link. If I copy this, open a new tab and paste that, I get a not found because that user isn't found. So I still need to decrypt that. So instead of doing user find or fail ID, what I would like to do here is I would like to actually use that same crypt method. So crypt, there we go, crypt, and I want to decrypt string of the given ID. Save that, refresh here, and now I get this user ID 1, which is me. And if I change something in here, like that, hit enter, route not found, and if I use user's ID 1, also not found, a 404, because the decryption of 1 isn't resulting into the ID of 1. So this allows us to, don't expose user IDs and use temporary encrypted strings. This is nice, right? We can now safely put out an ID in there and it's encrypted for us and decrypted by our controllers or Livewire components or whatever. And we can securely pass on tokens that represent IDs of users or companies or invoices or whatever you want to encrypt. So let's jump on to the final tip of today, and that is storing your API keys safely. So imagine you have payment providers and you want to store those API tokens for each user in your database. And well, chances are someday your database may be out in the open for everyone to read, and you don't want those API keys to be exposed, right? So tip number 6, encrypting secure stuff in your database. Let's dive in. Imagine that we have this API key in our user object, and well, it could be any object, for instance, but in this case, it's our user object. It's a nullable field, and I want to store my API key, for example, for my payment provider or whatever, for my user. In my profile, I have this field where I can fill out any API key. So this is a secret here. If I save that, it's saved. If I refresh, go back and forth, it is stored. But the only problem is in the database, let me pull up the database and refresh that. For my Bert@Vulpo account, I have an API key of this is a secret. So imagine that our database is leaked. Well, our password is, of course, encrypted, but we can also encrypt other fields like API key. In order to do so, we must add onto our object here of the user, so our user model, in the fillable fields, we have this API key, and then we have this costs array. For instance, an email verified ad is a date time, a password is a hashed one, and we can add here API key is encrypted. Let me save that, and for demo purposes, I will refresh my migrations. So run my migrations again with a seed, and let me just pull up my database again. Now I don't have an API key stored, and if I refresh, I will be forced to sign in again. So bert@vulpo.be, password, there we go. All right, so if I now do this is my secret, save that. If I refresh, I still have this is my secret string in here, but if I go over to my database and I refresh here, I have this encrypted string, which holds this is my secret, but in an encrypted way. So if someone gets in touch with our database and it's my API key will be safely stored and encrypted in my database. Okay, so that was my final tip of today. These were 5 tips about leveling up your security of your Laravel projects to the next step. If you like this, please put your comments down below and we'll discuss further. If you really like this video, please like and subscribe. And subscribing really helps me. So I will see you in one of the next videos. Take care and yeah, enjoy coding. Bye-bye.